By clicking on Hardware Configuration, a new page with the same name opens where the setting for voltage and current outputs, binary inputs and outputs of the device, as well as some other settings in Extra Setting are set. In Analog Output tab, the settings for voltage and current outputs, activeness or inactiveness of outputs, labeling them and displaying the actual values for the output signals of the device are adjusted. In voltage and current output sections, the maximum receivable voltage and current from the outputs of the device are specified according to their wiring, which the users can use depending on their needs. By selecting any of the options, a figure of the wiring for receiving the required voltage and current is displayed in a box in the middle of the page. For example, by selecting single-phase 300 voltage to receive up to 300 voltage with a 400 milliampere current, the user needs to do the wiring according to this figure. In the current output section, there is some information about wiring. For example, in the first wiring, there are 6 current outputs with 32 amperes. In this case, a maximum of 32 ampere with 3 voltage is injected from every phase, and up to 5 ampere with 12 voltage is receivable from the current outputs. In the Show Actual Value column, in Voltage Output Signal and Current Output Signal section, it is possible to activate displaying the actual value of output signal in the Signal View window. To do this, you need to change the value of the cell of your intended signal in the Show Actual Value from false to true. For example, if the Show Actual Value of VL1-E signal is changed to true, by running the test, it is observed that there are circles on the waveform of its signal. In the Output Label column, it is possible to specify a label for each of the outputs. In addition to the labels, in the drop-down field, it is possible to add new label by typing it. In the Output Target column, for each of outputs, a target will be specified. In selecting an output target, it is important to note that each of these output targets has a meaning. For example, if VL1-E is selected for the first output of the voltage output A, and IL1 for the first output of the current output A, by selecting Set Mode ZI Constant, the software divides the two voltage of VL1-E into 1 ampere of IL1, which are the first output of the voltage output A and the first output of the current output A, respectively. To stimulate phase to ground fault with a 2 ohm fault impedance, now if in the hardware configuration page, VL1-E is selected for the second output of the voltage output A, in stimulating the fault impedance of the previous example, the software again divides the 2 voltage of VL1-E into 1 ampere current of IL1, except that this time the voltage of VL1-E and IL1 is injected from the second output of the voltage output A and the first output of the current output A, respectively. Also, it should be noted that if VL3-E is selected for the third output of the voltage output A, and the same output target is selected for the single-phase output of the voltage output B, the third output of the voltage output A changes to not used, and this output target is selected for the single-phase output of the voltage output B. This means that each of the available output target can only be selected for a single output. As another example, in the AMT distance room, the software uses voltage output A and current output A to stimulate fault impedance. If the user wants to use the current output B instead of current output A for current injection, they should select IL1, IL2, and IL3 as the output target. For the 3 outputs of the current output B in the hardware configuration page,